Hey guys, this is Morphs. Today, what we're working on is the set of swords from Sword Art Online. It's actually a pretty good anime. I'd definitely check it out if you want. But I kind of forgot to start recording earlier, so we'll do a little quick catch up. Basically, what I got here is a popular board that I planed down to about 7/16 thickness. Got my patterns drafted up. Basically, I just laid the patterns over the boards, obviously, with a little bit of carbon paper in there, traced it out, cut them out. Now I got basically the blank that I'm going to start with. Same thing on this one. This I cut the hilt and the blade. What I'm going to move on to next is actually getting the handle here, and we'll keep going and we'll get everything else made. So, alright.
Okay, so I'm gonna do something a little different on this video. Excuse me. I've noticed obviously a lot of my videos are very long, kind of boring. So I'm gonna do a time-lapse video so you can get the full build of the sword, but without all the time consuming. So as you've just noticed, I just laid out the handles, put them on the template there, got them all sized up. I wish this was my actual human speed. I could get a lot more done. All of the props. Anywho, daydreaming. Back to what I was doing. So obviously, like I said, you can see. Now here, you can see in the back there, I just had a little bit of steel rod. That'll come into play later on. Here, obviously, I'm doing some routing. Just getting the hilt all nice routed up. Really got to watch those fingers. Man, did you see that? I just about nicked one of those right off of there. Do a little bit more routing on the sword there. Realizing I should have sped this up even more. This is really boring. Look at me go. Woo. So much excitement routing. There we go. Moving on to the other sword there. Doing the same thing, getting the edges all nice and routed off. Really should have sped this up. That was a cool sword spin flip move. Did you see that? I'm about to rewind that. I'm about to watch that shit again. That was pretty badass. There we go. Just about done. A little bit more cleanup on the first one there. Didn't quite like the edges. There we are. Okay, now this is what I was talking about before, is that steel rod. Now that I've measured out so those accent pieces on the sword will cover up that steel rod later on. Move the old Mountain Dew caffeine jolt can out the way there. Got to keep going. That's how I'm moving so fast. Oh, blank spot. I don't know what happened there. Okay, now here you can see I've marked out where that steel rod is going to go on the sword. So, like I said before, the accent pieces will hide that steel rod. Just measuring up, make sure everything's all nice and straight. And there you can see I've got it cut out for it. Here I'm just going to take the handle, I'm going to chuck it up in my lathe and just bore a hole all the way through the center for that steel rod. Now this is something that you don't have to do, is put in the steel rod. I put in the steel rod for more reinforcement. The client said that they were going to be using this as actual floor showpieces. So I wanted that extra strength. Now you don't have to do this. You can obviously just glue the handle directly to the hilt, or maybe insert a small 3 to 4 inch wooden dowel pin, and that should hold it. Here I'm marking up the accent pieces on the handle. That little white block I've got there is actually some old resin that I had lying around. I love lathing in resin. As you can see, it just melts right away. So much smoother than wood. Love lathing in resin. Again, you just seen I just bored out the end so it'll fit over the dowel rod. Here I'm cutting it off. Here's one ring. There's that ring chucked up in the lathe again. And here I'm just going to smooth out the edges. Listen to the old tunes. Looks like I really need to shave. Don't look at that. That's gross. I'll block that out. Don't look at it. Gross. There we go. Getting all edges rounded off there. There's 1 and 2. Doing a little test fitting, making sure that the fit. And there you can see I inserted the steel rod. Like I said, that's for strength. You don't have to, just optional. Here I'm working on the other sword accent pieces. A little different shaping, a little bit bigger, obviously. A little bit more lathe work. I actually love lathe work. It's actually one of the quietest tools I own. And it's just, I don't know, it's just calming. I don't know. It's getting the other side all rounded off, all smoothed up. There we go. All right. Here I'm going to install the accent pieces onto the handle. Just a little bit of super glue you can see there in the background. Just making sure the threaded rod fit. A little bit of super glue. Now here you can see on the back end of the handle, I did not insert that piece down all of the way. That'll come into play again later on in the video. Same thing for the second sword. You can see I left that gap in there. All right. Check and make sure everything's level. Make sure everything's smoothed out, clean. Got her on there the way I want to. Making sure it's level. A little bit more glue in there. There we go. Okay, now here I'm going to install the threaded rods. Again, if you don't want to do the threaded rods, or if you want to just glue it directly to it, or say insert a pin, that's fine. Here you can see I put a little piece of plastic down into that slot, and that raises up the threaded rod to make sure it's level and straight, so when you're holding the sword, you don't have a weird crooked sword. And here I'm just putting a little hot glue for an initial hold that'll keep the threaded rod obviously in place until I put on a stronger epoxy, which I'm about to do in a minute. There, I just showed you the little plastic pieces again. All nice and set up. Now here, I'm just testing it to make sure that it is straight before I do the final gluing. Because if it was not straight, while the hot glue is still there, you could heat it up a little bit with a hot glue gun, or a heat gun. There we go, I'm sorry. Losing my mind. And straighten it out until it looks good. So I liked it. Now I'm going to use some epoxy, and that'll be for the final hold, and that won't move at all. Be really nice and secure. I'm getting ready. Now that what you've seen is actually just a piece of PVC board. I would recommend putting something down. You don't want to accidentally glue your swords to the table. Not that I've done that. Never. Not even once. If anyone says you I did that, they're lying. Moving on. Okay, so yep, getting all those glued in. The old stick. There we go. Okay. Now I did this to both sides. I let that side sit, flipped it over, and I inlaid a little bit more epoxy. You might have to do a little bit of sanding on that epoxy just to really make sure it's smooth. Now here you can see I'm drawing out the accent pieces for both swords. That's a 1/4 inch thick piece of MDF that I've got below that paper. That dark piece is just some carbon paper or transfer paper. If you don't have some, get some. The stuff is amazing. Drawing those out. Now here I'm going to show you a trick that I've shown in the past, but I'm going to do it again because I love this little trick. And here you can see I've got 2 pieces, same size, and some double-sided tape. Now double-sided tape, you put it on there, obviously. You peel off that back part. Okay. Come on, there you go. And you stick them together. Now the reason of you doing this is now when you cut them out, you can peel those pieces apart, take off the excess tape as you've just shown, and boom, instant, 2 pieces identically the same because you cut them out at the same time. Awesome little trick. So there we go. There's the accent pieces. Now here I'm laying in a little bit of wood putty not really necessary, but I did it just to double check and just to make sure all my bases are covered. So if one of those accent pieces just didn't quite cover it, it'll be fine. So that'll be nice and smooth. Again, you shouldn't have had to do this step, but I decided to do it just to play it on the safe side. Now these pieces here, I got a brand new piece of machinery. I was going to say brand new toy because it is a new toy, and I modeled these up into 123D design. The reason I did that is because, like I said, I got this brand new 3D printer, and you gotta play with it. I mean, come on, it's a 3D printer. How awesome are they? So obviously I printed them out. You don't have to print them out. You could have designed these in the 1/4 inch MDF, cut them out exactly the same as the other accent pieces that I did. Again, I 3D printed them because it's a freaking 3D printer. There we go. Got them all printed up. The accent pieces. Just laying them out, making sure they're all proportional, make sure they look good. Again, if you don't have to 3D print these, you can design these in the wood and put them on there. Now here, going back to what I said, remember how we left those open gaps into the end of the sword hilts? Now here I mixed up a little bit of resin, and I'm pouring in them into those caps. Now what you do is you put the threaded rod on, and you put the nut on there in a washer, and you tighten it down so it's all nice and tight and secure, so the sword won't go anywhere. And then you pour that resin on top of that nut, and just to cap it off, and nobody will know the wiser unless you tell them. Here I'm just going to do a little base painting, a little priming, a little sanding. I'm not going to show you any of that because nobody wants to watch paint dry. I used to work in a paint department for 12 years. Not that exciting. I could tell you that. Watched a lot of paint dry in 12 years. So here, obviously, I just putting the base colors on, the one black. The other one, I'm going to put a base of white on so that the blue will be nice and bright and shine through. Like I said, I'm going to skip over most of the painting. Hurry up and finish painting. This is boring. Nobody wants to watch painting. Look at that overspray. Wear a respirator. Safety first or second. Nope, first. Definitely first. Now here I'm just going to show the finished swords. You can see I got them all painted up. All the accent pieces done. Just going through. Here I'm going to show you the paint colors that I used. You don't have to use these paint colors, obviously. These are just what I used, of what the colors I liked. Again, just showing you a little bit of the finished details of the sword. Okay, moving on to the paint. Here is a Model Master acrylic. That is the gray that I used. Here's one of the blues. Ocean blue. Here's the lighter blue that I used. Indian turquoise. That blue I put on the edge of the sword. Just standard black, nothing exciting there. Here's the gloss seaside for the main blue that I used on the sword. Here's a primer that you guys have seen me use 100 times. It's just a standard filler primer, just help to fill in all those little tiny imperfections. And then this is the gloss clear coat that I put on top just to give it a nice finished color. And that's it for this one. I hope you liked this video. I'll see you on the next build.